Director of AmCham Dubai, and it's my pleasure to welcome you guys all here this morning. I hope everybody is staying well, staying safe, and staying home. We continue to do that at AmCham Dubai, and reinventing our workspace into the webinar series that you're participating in today. So we're excited about that. We're watching the numbers go up. If we could just wait for about 15 or 20 seconds longer as folks log in. Okay, why don't we go ahead then and get started. Our series on workspace wellness started last week with some practical tips on what people could do to manage their workspace a bit better. And this morning it continues with the support of Cigna, and its wonderful team has put together a conversation with Dominic Watts, and we're pleased to have both people or both organizations supporting us this morning as we look into a bit more of the wellness component of it and the mindfulness element of being at home and what that's actually like for us all. So we're pleased to welcome our friends from the Swedish Business Council and AmChams around the GCC. I think we have some folks from Qatar and Oman with us this morning, and maybe some Kuwait folks, it's hard to say. We hope that you enjoy the session this morning, take away lots of useful information that can help you as we all go through this process of learning what it's like to be at home and work. I will introduce both of our speakers and then they'll hand off because that's a smoother platform to get us through the session. Time is of the essence on these things. So our partner Cigna is always there for us. Whenever we come up with something related to wellness, they jump on board immediately, and this is no exception. They have been nimble and very willing to engage with us in this process. So thank you to Cigna and thank you to Dominic for coming on board. I'd like to introduce Leah Cotterill. She's the Chief Distribution Office at Cigna Insurance Middle East and Africa. In this capacity, she leads the Middle East markets, Africa markets, growth teams. She oversees local, international, private medical insurance operations, drives Middle East and Africa's market development strategy, and frames buyer group needs for various segments. Leah has 20 years of experience in the health and wellness industry. Prior to her current role, she was Chief Operations Officer at Cigna Insurance Middle East, and was responsible for delivering an operating model that met and exceeded a diverse set of customer and client expectations and enabled the delivery of Cigna Middle East's short, medium, and long-term strategic priorities, as well as for realigning the operations 2020 vision and strategy. Previously, she led global migration to CIME's new operating model following the acquisition of Zurich Insurance Middle East. In an earlier role, she headed the client management team for global health benefits in North America. Leah joined Cigna in 2008, shortly after the launch of the Middle East business, initially working in sales and then building a client management capability in the region. Prior to joining Cigna, she worked at AXA PPE Healthcare, serving in various roles for customer service operations to business development. She was responsible for growth, relationships, and service delivery to UK-based large corporate clients and distribution partners. Leah holds a diploma in healthcare insurance and an advanced diploma in private medical insurance from the Chartered Insurance Institute, in addition to segment management development program and Leaders for the Future certificate. She brings with her a wealth of experience, and we look forward to hearing what Cigna how Cigna is engaging in the world today. Following Leah, we will hear from Dominic Watts, who's our primary speaker related to mindfulness this morning. He's a freelance educational consultant for Gabitas and also a tutor and mindfulness coach. He received his degree from Nottingham University in psychology and philosophy, and after this, he trained as a teacher. He's worked in education for 7 years and taught many subjects to both primary and secondary levels. Mindfulness and well-being is appropriate for all age groups, and so he's been engaged in that capacity from reception all the way up to A and IB levels. For the last 2 years in Dubai, he's taught mindfulness and theory of knowledge to the IB students. He's taught groups of parents, teachers, and elite athletes in the UK, and he's worked as an LTA with one of the leading British tennis players in order to deliver sports psychology program to him, specifically focusing on how mindfulness can help his performance. He's currently studying his PhD in education, specifically to teach mindfulness. So we look forward to hearing his insights. Over to you, Leah. Thank you so much again for being here this morning.
Thank you, Cara, and good morning, and thank you again for joining us with today's session. I'm really pleased to be here with you for this first session of the Cigna AmCham Workplace Wellness Series. By means of introduction, as Cara said, I'm Leah Cottrell. I'm the Chief Distribution Officer for the Middle East and Africa. I'm incredibly proud to have worked for Cigna for the past 12 years, and never more so than during the current situation, where I'm really pleased to be part of a fabulous team that's bringing support, information, and we hope reassurance to the clients and customers that we have the honor to serve. So really look forward to connecting with you during this session. Bear with me a second, having a slight technology issue. Okay. Yeah, I think it's clear to everyone that we're going through unprecedented times. The spread of COVID-19 is affecting our communities in different ways, and I completely understand how stressful the unpredictability of the current situation can be, both as a leader, as a spouse, as a parent, as a daughter, as a friend. I think we're all in those situations, and it's affecting our lives in so many and quite often quite deeply personal ways. And the 24/7 news cycle can sometimes add confusion and anxiety as much as it aims to educate and inform us as well. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has plunged the world into a whole new reality of remote working, forcing us to collaborate and interact in ways like never before. And in our spare moments, we're school teachers and motivating the children to participate as well. It calls for employers and employees to go above and beyond and deliver results as they navigate this completely uncharted territory in terms of working from home. And it's interesting, I think, because whilst working remotely has been discussed at length in exploring future work scenarios, and interestingly quite often resisted in this part of the world, certainly versus other places, this kind of abrupt arrival has led to unique challenges for many employees, thinking about the lack of space, the lack of infrastructure and distractions. I mean, I'm sat here with my monitor raised on books, for example, and understandably the situation has brought on unparalleled levels of stress and anxiety, and I feel sure that we'll come out the other side of this situation with quite a refreshed perspective. At Cigna, and many of you may be aware of us, but we're dedicated to improving the health, well-being, and peace of mind of the people that we serve. And it's now more than ever that we want to deliver on this commitment to our communities, the business communities, our partners, our clients, and our members. And that's exactly why we partnered with AmCham to deliver this series of wellness webinars to try and support people through these times. For more than 200 years, Cigna's has been led by its mission to help people live healthier, more secure lives, and is recognized as one of the leading providers in health services and solutions, both to individuals, to employers, and to governments. In this region, we've got over 17 years of experience, and I've been here for the last 12. And with that, we've got a really solid understanding of what the market health needs are. We consider ourselves to go beyond being a health insurer. We consider ourselves to be a health services company. And I feel like this really translates in the way that we support our customers, which is a lot more than simply paying a claim. As we speak, our clinical teams are providing one-on-one case management support to customers who find themselves in a situation where they may need a COVID-19 test, or unfortunately, where they may have received a positive test result. And literally, our doctors and nurses are talking by phone, by WhatsApp, by text, by whatever means that a customer would want to ensure that they've got somebody there that can provide support, can provide information and advocacy for them at difficult times. Sorry. As we think about the healthcare needs, it really leads me to a topic that we've spoken about quite a lot at Cigna recently, which is stress. And stress being the bane of the modern working society. Some of you may remember a survey that we released back in 2019, the same sort of time frame, that revealed that 70% of UAE residents admit to feeling stress at work, and with 22% of them facing unmanageable stress levels. We talked a lot at the time about the fact that 77% of people feel like they were in an always-on work environment. And at the same time, that study showed that the existing workplace wellness programs that are in place really weren't cutting it with providing support to the employees, with only about 30% reported participation. With the current COVID-19 situation, we certainly see this situation with stress exacerbated in a whole different way, and sort of new concerns are coming to light. Things like struggling to cope with working in isolation, coupled with the increasing fear and concern around job security, is really amplifying this sense of stress. I think there's as we think about that job security, that underlying fear of being made redundant leads to increased pressure on employees to always be accessible and always be switched on, and further blurring that line between work and personal time. And then I think the final piece to that sort of stress overload at the moment is the extreme concern about the fear of contracting COVID-19. A recent APCO worldwide research study showed that 80% of residents in the GCC are extremely concerned about contracting COVID-19, and the uncertainty of how long this situation will go on continues to add to the emotional stress, the fear, and the anxiety. I think we're all going to be in need of Dominic's session in just a minute or so. At Cigna, we have a robust menu of services and offerings that help our customers manage their health and well-being. And we focus those around four main pillars: access to care, creating awareness, early detection, as well as driving behavioral change. And to be honest with you, many of these services have been in place prior to the current COVID situation. And yet some of these services have really, come to the fore and proven their value during this situation. Things like our telehealth solution, where you don't need to leave your house and go to a medical professional. Just literally on your app, you can access healthcare. And we've always had that, but it's just now more prevalent and needed than ever. In addition to that, employee assistance programs, which provides confidential support to employees with any stress concerns, financial concerns, they can obtain that type of support, as well as Cigna Envoy, which is our digital member tool. Just to tie this up, to adapt to the new working environment, we've taken some of these offerings and made them virtual. So in the past, where we would go onto the site of our clients and conduct health promotion activity, we have recently launched a program called Connect for Health, which is a virtual program of fortnightly sessions that aims to address many of the challenges our customers may be facing, like anxiety, managing work-life balance. Sessions like this with Dominic, as well as a broader well-being content. So enough from me. Thank you again for your time, and I'd really like to hand over and thank Dominic for supporting the event.
Thank you very much, Leah. Thank you for that introduction and all the useful, interesting info about what Cigna are offering at the moment. I'm particularly interested myself in the telehealth service. I remember hearing about that before. I think that's really amazing, and that's where the world is going, and people need to have access to that, especially now we're seeing that more than ever. So there's a question that I put up there for everybody just to start with, and the question is, to what extent do you understand mindfulness? Okay? And I'd just like everybody to answer that. Helena, I just want to let you know that this is, from my side as the presenter, this is the end of the presentation. I only have the option to go back in this direction. I just wanted to let you know that. I am actually more than happy to go on without my normal slides. I've done it many times before, but I just want to make you aware of that, so perhaps we can think of a way to get my PowerPoint up there. So please have a look at this question.
Just one minute, okay?
That's all right, no problem. That's fine. I'm more than happy to go on with an introduction to mindfulness without that. If you'd like me to share it on my screen, that might be an option as well, but it will just take me a minute to get that organized.
Hi, Dominic. It's up now. You should see it.
No, mine's only giving me the options to control the slides upwards in this direction. It's saying that this 5th slide is the last slide. Sorry, guys. So yeah, if we can just put the answers to this. Here we go. Thank you very much. All done. Perfect. Thank you. So as we've just seen, everybody that's joined us, that's a perfect example of the little events that happen to us every single day, which can cause us stress. I mean, you heard about my introduction. I wanted to give you a couple more things that I'm doing lately, which perhaps weren't mentioned. So I'm director of our Mindful Schools program for the Free Spirit Project, and what I do is I'm providing mindfulness training for schools, school teams of teachers, the parent community, and ultimately the children. But we start with the adults because it's the adult community that do not necessarily understand this type of thing. So it's not that we need to teach the kids this, we need to learn mindful skills as adults. That's our opinion, okay? And we've trained many corporate teams and groups of adults across Dubai. So just looking at the results of the poll here, this is what I expected. 19 out of 40, just a little. I think that makes sense. That's the general consensus on this, is that mindfulness has become a big thing worldwide, but there's not necessarily that many people who've really gone into it. There's still quite a few people who've never even heard of it, so I'm going to go into that and give you a good intro. But really, what I want you guys to get from this is I want you to have a real understanding of the need for mindfulness, why people are talking about it so much, why it's changing people's lives. That's what I really want you to come away from this with. I will give you a few techniques, handy tips of things you can do throughout the day in order to bring mindfulness into your lives. But more than anything, the most important thing from my point of view is that you understand exactly what it is, because there's so many misconceptions that go around regarding mindfulness and what it really means. Okay? So, I think that your most precious resource as human beings is attention. Okay? And I'd like you just to look at this quote, which is quite shocking. The primary aim of Facebook when we created it was, how can we take as much of your attention as possible? This was said by the co-creator of Facebook, okay? This was quite a famous press conference in the end, and it kind of went viral, and he was put into loads of conspiracy videos and presented as a Bond villain because he said this, but he did say himself, we couldn't believe at Facebook how much we succeeded to this end. We couldn't believe how powerfully we were able to take everybody's attention. I don't know how much everybody knows about social media and the way it works, but there's literally algorithms working with these social media companies, which allows the platform to release likes and notifications, literally according to a pattern, to give you the biggest addiction possible. I mean, it's really frightening to consider that, but the purpose of this is for me to show that attention is so important. It's the foundation of our lives. If we don't have attention, we can't do anything, right? It's our fundamental thing that we have. Consciousness, attention, those two words might be interchangeable. And It's really mysterious what consciousness is and what our attention actually is. Science does not understand what consciousness is, to the extent that many scientists believe there's no such thing as consciousness, believe it or not, right? I would question that, but I'm just trying to show you guys how these are not answered questions, okay? This is not something that we as a society totally understand. We really don't, okay? So, there was a fantastic experiment that was done in Washington, D.C. metro station many years ago, and there was a violinist playing, and 1,300 people went through the station in 1 hour. 13 of them stopped out of 1,300. That's a tiny, tiny percentage. And out of those, half of them were kids. And most of those kids, or all of them, were taken away by their parents and dragged on, okay? The reason this experiment was so interesting is because it was done on purpose, and the violinist was one of the greatest violinists in the world, playing the world's most expensive violin and playing 4 of the most difficult pieces of music ever created for violin. So this was not your ordinary busker, okay? This was a fantastic opportunity for these people to witness something for free, totally spontaneously, which would have been tremendously uplifting and fantastic to bear witness to. These most amazing pieces of music ever written, and basically everybody missed it. And that was the reason why they did this experiment, to see in this busy environment, which is basically our everyday lives, our working environment, what do we notice? What do we miss? And basically everybody missed it. A week prior to this, he'd sold out the concert hall for $100 a ticket. And then he went to the station and nobody even noticed he was there. It's really interesting, and it tells us a lot about ourselves, because we are those people. It's not a separate group of people. That's us. That's the way that we have learned to live as a culture. Like Leah was saying, this always-on culture. That is us. All of those people were rushing to work, and they were totally immersed in the drama of their mental world. Okay? This is why people are turning to mindfulness, because they're seeing that the mind is an incredibly powerful tool. Attention is incredibly powerful, and we don't quite know how to use it, and we get caught and we get stuck and we miss things. If you really just consider how much of your life you spend on autopilot, it can be quite shocking to actually realize that. So before this crisis, before everybody was in, how often do we pay attention to the steering wheel when we're actually driving? How often are we really present when we're driving? How often are we focusing on somebody with 100% of our attention when they're speaking to us? Or are we drifting off? Are we distracted? Are we considering something else? People are noticing all over the world that this kind of thing's happening, and that it makes our lives worse than they need to be. And so people are learning how to almost train their attention, train themselves to be fully present with whatever it is that's in front of them. And that's one fundamental aspect of mindfulness. It's only one aspect, but that's one very important part of mindfulness. Okay? These are some problems that can come up. We can fail to attend to reality. You can see this guy, he's walking to a lamppost, right? It's quite a funny image, and I think it's quite apt in these times. I'm sure this has probably happened in real life to hundreds of people because they're on their smartphone on Facebook, because Facebook has taken their attention. But it's an example of something which can happen to us all the time. And that's what happened in the violin example. All of those people were so focused on their own dramas that they were failing to attend to the reality that was around them. Okay? We can fall into thinking traps. COVID-19 is an absolute hotbed of thinking traps, okay? One thinking trap is, oh my God, I'm definitely going to get this virus. Everything's going to be terrible for me. All my family are going to get it. All my elderly relatives are going to get it. That's an example of a thinking trap, because we're treating our thought, which is really a perspective, only one perspective on reality, which is, perhaps I might get this virus. That's true. Perhaps you might. But thought can twist reality, and it can convince us that we're definitely going to get the virus. That's when we've fallen into a thinking trap. And if we're not aware of that, and if we don't have the necessary attention to catch that as it happens, we fall into the trap and we behave as if it's true. Okay? And I'm sure, hopefully, when I'm saying that, some of you might jog your memory and think, yeah, that's true. That has happened to me. Because this is happening to us all the time. We've probably all fallen into a thinking trap this morning already. Okay? But I can't necessarily say what those are for you. Unnecessary suffering. So this is just a picture, obviously, of traffic going from Dubai into Sharjah. And this is something that we don't have to deal with at the moment, thankfully. But on an ordinary day, this is necessary suffering. Sitting in traffic is necessary suffering. So what do I mean by unnecessary suffering? This is perhaps the most profoundly important aspect of mindfulness, is understanding what is necessary suffering and what is unnecessary. What's the difference between these? So let's just take COVID-19 as an example. Well, from my perspective in Dubai, it's necessary for me to stay in my house right now. I haven't got a choice about that. I can go out once every 3 days for groceries or something like that, but I have to stay in where I am. That is necessary. I can't help it, but I can control how I respond to that to a certain extent. I don't have to let that ruin every single one of my days by sitting around being annoyed about it. That's an option for me. I could spend a lot of my time worrying about it and being annoyed about it, but it's about taking control of what we can control and making intelligent responses to that. Okay, and this is something that has to be done again and again and again, because the mind will fall into these traps regularly. That is what happens. And that's why mindfulness is a practice. It's not a piece of knowledge. You won't listen to this talk and afterwards your life will be completely transformed and you'll be a perfectly mindful human being. That's totally not how it works. Mindfulness is something, even for mindfulness trainers such as myself, who practice meditation for many, many years, this is something which we're constantly remembering again and again each day to prevent us from falling into these traps and to give us increased control over what we can control. Okay? So attention is fundamental. If you want to take any pictures of slides, this is a really good one. This is the justification for mindfulness. Okay? Attention is fundamental. We're using it all the time for everything. We don't know how to use it properly because we've never been trained to do that, because society doesn't understand it yet. It gets tangled up and causes problems, some of the ones that we've just looked at. So these are the reasons for mindfulness. But so what is it? That's what I want to get into now. Really, what does it really mean? What is it, okay, in practice? Is it this guy? Perhaps the 50% of you who said you already knew a bit about mindfulness, perhaps some of you have this misconception that it is this guy. This is something we encounter quite a lot when we do corporate work, is that many people working in the corporate world have an image of mindfulness that is all just about peace, relaxation, and it's not the real world. You can't be in the real world of business or working and have this lovely fantasy of being perfectly happy all the time. And that's really not what mindfulness is about. It's not about being perfectly happy. It's not about never having any problems. And it's certainly not about having a totally empty mind and never thinking about anything. But these are things that are associated with mindfulness and meditation. So I just want to get rid of that immediately. It's absolutely not the case, okay? This is what it is. It's learning to pay attention to the world, including our inner world, in a new way, which transforms the way that we live our lives. So it's a profoundly different way of living, which does not require you to leave society and go and live in a hippie commune and not have a normal job, anything like that. Not at all. It's a subtle shift in the way that we pay attention to things. That's all. And what people find is that just making this subtle shift profoundly influences everything, okay? Now, I don't like to be too wordy with my slides, but this next one is wordy because it's really important, okay? This is another really good one to take a photo of if you'd like to. I'm sure I can share these slides afterwards anyway. Mindfulness activities allow us to develop a deeper quality of attention. Really consider that, a deeper quality of attention. So when we're listening to somebody, we're really listening. It changes everything. It changes the way we relate to all experience. So this is how it affects our inner world. It gives us a better understanding of our own thinking patterns, emotional drives, and behaviors. So it allows us to understand ourselves much better, which brings all sorts of benefits. But it's not always lovely. It's not always rainbows and butterflies understanding yourself. Okay, that's another misconception. In the outer world, it makes us more aware of others and how we relate to them. So it changes our relationships for the better, and it makes us act more effectively in the world. Okay? If you understand yourself better, it allows you to relate to other people better. So if you've come to terms with your own anxiety, if you understand that you're experiencing anxiety, loneliness, frustration, anger, perhaps on a daily basis, as many people are, if you've seen that in yourself, and you've understood how to come into a relationship with those negative emotions, which is healthy, then you're going to be able to help other people to do the same. And it's going to help you to deal with it better when other people express those emotions. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Now, I have an example here, which is probably the best one I have from my whole career, which is a wonderful little 5-year-old in England called Dara. We did 2 sessions of mindfulness only, and he'd understood the principle so profoundly just in these 2 sessions, which shows you how simple it is, that it really changed his life. And his mum came 2 weeks later. She gave me a card, and inside it, she was telling me a story. She said it was a Saturday morning and she was getting her kids ready for school, and she was speaking to Dara in just an unnecessarily stressed out way. She was raising her voice, and he didn't really deserve that. That happens all the time, right? And she totally couldn't believe his response. He stopped and he said, "Mum, there's a lot of things I want to say to you right now, but I'm just going to go upstairs and just take a few minutes, and then I'll come back down in a minute." And he went upstairs, and she was just rooted to the spot. She couldn't believe what he was saying, because it was totally unlike he'd ever acted before. And he went off, and he came down 5 minutes later, and she said, "What was all that about?" And he said, "It's fine. I know, I've thought about it, and I know that you didn't mean to speak to me like that. You were only saying it because you felt stressed. So it's fine. Don't worry about it." That's really amazing, right? I hope that you guys can see the significance of that example. The reason I include that is because it's so significant. It shows the power of just simply understanding that we don't have to behave in the way that our mind and our emotions are pushing us to behave. And that is the ultimate principle of mindfulness, okay? Where is our freedom? Okay, we're going to see. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And this is totally true. Dara had recognized that between the stimulus of his mum speaking to him in a way that he didn't deserve and the response he gave to the world, there was a space. He found that space because he understood it was there. And in that space, he decided, very wisely, especially for somebody of such a young age, to take some time to work out the best way to respond. And for any difficulties you guys are encountering to do with this crisis, this is the key. This really is the key. But the issue is, how do we do that? How do we find that space? Because so often we're reactive. We react immediately and instinctively. And these behaviors are hardwired into us. It's not always possible to access this space. Even when you practice this kind of thing, it's not always possible. You won't always be able to behave exactly as you want to. But the more frequently we can access this space, the better off we will be, and the more intelligent and effective our responses to the world will be. And nowhere will you see the effects of it more profoundly than now during this crisis, when there's an actual crisis at hand. Okay? So, there's a question that's going to pop up in a second to do with this slide regarding meditation. So how many times have you practiced meditation? I'd really like to get an idea about that, because it's interesting, and I get quite different answers to these when I go to different places. And as you're answering that, I want to just explain to you what mindfulness meditation is and why it's so powerful. It's incredibly simple. It's the simplest thing in the world, which is probably why we never do it, right? Come to your senses. We say that when people are living in fantasy and they've gone away from reality, and we want them to come back, we say, come to your senses. That's the traditional use of this phrase. And we betray our own knowledge when we say this. We don't realize. It shows that as a people, we understand this. We understand the principle of this. Okay? So in mindfulness, we're bringing our attention to the world of the senses. It can be looking, simply looking around, consciously looking. It can be listening. There's many meditations where you'll just be listening to the various sounds, and it can just be coming into your body, because your body is present now. In mindfulness, we say the body is the anchor, okay, that grounds us in the present moment. Now, I can guarantee you, if in the Washington, D.C. metro experiment, if all of those people on every single train had just done a 15-minute meditation, I can absolutely guarantee you that a huge number of them would have stopped for that violinist, even if they were late, even if they had something they needed to think about. I can guarantee you they would have. And it's not because I'm a mind reader, it's because I understand this very, very simple principle. If they've been grounding their attention in the present, their attention would be in the reality that they are in, and they would have seen the guy. It's as simple as that. So the answers are in. It's actually very well balanced. Okay, that's fine. So we're going to do a meditation now, okay? 3 or 4 minutes only, just to see what this is really all about, because mindfulness is all about doing it, okay? So just close your eyes wherever you are. Allow yourself to become comfortable. Allow your body to become still. And just gently moving into an awareness of your breathing right now. Allowing your attention to rest on the sensations of breathing. Breathing is so, so simple. Always there in the background. Just really getting in touch with what it feels like to breathe as if you've never ever breathed before. I'm inviting you to notice what it really feels like. Tracing the journey of each breath. Perhaps noticing what the air feels like.
Everyone, we've lost Dom for a moment, and the meditation has worked so well. It's taken him to another place right now. So let's take this moment to continue the deep breaths as we restore Dom to the hearing for everyone. Dom, are you with us? And just deep breaths into the pit of your stomach, everyone, and out again.
Okay, and just opening your eyes. Okay, just opening your eyes now. Coming back to the room. Now, what we've just done there is 3-4 minutes. Just like to invite you to think about how much of a tiny portion of your day that is. But this is not the kind of thing that our mind ordinarily would want to do. The mind doesn't necessarily find it interesting, fun, right? And this is why with kids, it's quite a struggle because they think, oh, it's boring, because the mind is just being invited just to rest for a minute. And we're not normally invited to do that. We've built a society which is always on the move, going from past to future and rushing around the imagination. That's why nobody stopped for the violin. And if you practice just a simple meditation like that, regularly, every day, even more than once a day, it allows you to be grounded in the reality that you're in. It's as simple as that. And it helps you to respond to the world more effectively and to understand yourself better. And people find that it reduces all sorts of problems in your life. Stress, it improves sleep, all sorts of benefits we've heard about, okay? This is mindfulness in action. So I really want to encourage everybody to take up a meditation practice. That's the most fundamentally useful thing you can possibly do for yourself in terms of mental health from my perspective and from the perspective of many other people, okay? So getting an app, Headspace is the most famous one, arguably. There's some amazing apps out there. Unfortunately, it's not possible at the moment to do mindfulness courses because everybody's in their house, but I'd really encourage a mindfulness course. But if you download an app such as Headspace, it gives you guided mindfulness meditations, and they teach you how to observe thought, how to observe emotion, how to feel emotion and allow emotion to be there in a way which changes our lives, okay? That's really what it's doing. And it shows you also how to put mindfulness into action in your real life, not just sitting doing meditation. That's what this slide is all about. Mindfulness in action means watchfulness of thought as it's happening, so we're not falling into thinking traps all the time. We're becoming aware of where our attention is throughout the day. Acceptance of emotions. Believe it or not, this really goes against our conditioning. We are not hardwired to accept our emotions. We are hardwired to defeat them, manage them, control them. That is not helpful for us. We need to feel anxious if we're anxious. We need to allow ourselves to feel the feeling, okay? Then the space opens up and we can decide what we want to do about that. But normally what happens is anxiety arises and we try to run away from it subconsciously. And when you practice a mindfulness course, you see that everybody's mind is working in the same way. When people feel fear, the mind tries to squash it or escape from it. It's fight or flight response to something which we think is a threat. Fear is not a threat. Anxiety is not a threat. Loneliness is not a threat. They are feelings to be felt, okay? And then once the space is opened up, we can look to conscious action based on our values. Sorry about that, went in the wrong direction there. So what are we facing? Leah gave a really, really nice introduction to this. She summed it up perfectly, everything that we're facing. And as I've just said then, we're facing uncertainty, we're facing anxiety, we're facing loneliness, we're facing actual financial threats, okay, to ourselves and our family. And more importantly than that, we're facing actual physical threats to our own health and the health of our family. Normally, we can imagine these threats, and we make up all sorts of crises that we might need to deal with at some point. Now we're actually in one. Okay, so let's put this stuff into practice. Let's see what we can actually do about this, okay? Now, as you can see from the previous slide, whatever we're facing, the answer for mindfulness is simple. That's the best thing about it. It's totally simple. It's just about looking properly at what is being experienced, feeling what is there to be felt, and understanding that that's not what we normally do. That's really important. We need to understand this is not what we normally do. But to understand that, you need to observe yourself. You need to understand yourself. And meditation really, really helps with that as well. And once you've seen how you normally respond to negativity, it allows you to open a space to do something different. Okay? So how can mindfulness help? Well, that's what I've just been describing, but here's a couple more examples. So we live in a culture of pressure. You can see this guy, perhaps. Sadly, this might remind some of you of yourselves and some people that you know. This is the culture we've built. We are under intense pressure, and so much of it is unnecessary. We don't need to feel such pressure all the time. And often just a shift in perspective, a shift in attitude, which can come from mindfulness and meditation, allows you to relate to everything in a different way. It allows you to relate to the work you're doing in a different way, to not put quite so much pressure on yourself to be perfect during this time. So one of the funny examples my colleague is always giving is that all of the crazy things we're supposed to be achieving during this time, where we've all got a bit more free time, we should all be learning 10 languages and standing on our heads and all of this sort of stuff. We should be writing 100 books, you know. This is my time to write my book. This is my time to learn 5 musical instruments. It's just ridiculous. It's unrealistic, you know. Again, it just shows how we put pressure on ourselves unnecessarily. That's unnecessary suffering. We don't need that. And if we practice meditation, mindfulness, we see, that's what I'm doing. It gives us a different perspective, and we see that's what we're doing, and it allows us to drop it. Okay? So just consider one thing you're worrying about at the moment, or the last thing you worried about, yesterday or the day before. Okay? Just consider it. And I want you to see how it's a mode of thinking. There's an attitude towards that which we've taken as the only way of looking at it. There are other ways of looking at it, okay? And meditation, practicing mindfulness throughout the day, taking a moment just to have a 3-minute meditation on an app, on YouTube, or just on your own, just taking a minute to stop everything, creates the space that can give you a different perspective, okay? Similarly, I've just talked about this little bit of culture of rushing around. You feel like you have to do your entire to-do list right now, okay? And everything I'm saying here, there's applications you can apply to your own situation, but these are the overriding mindsets which create stress. So that's what we need to pay attention to. I can't obviously give you any sort of technique or answer for every single little individual thing you're facing, but what I'm doing is showing us ourselves and the way that we approach things and showing how mindfulness impacts upon that, okay? We don't need to be this guy, right? If anything is coming from this crisis, we can certainly take that from it. We do not need to be this guy. The world is giving us the opportunity to not be this guy, to do one thing at a time, okay? What's that? Oh, it's just my mind. Yeah, we've all been there, okay? If you just take a moment as you sit at your desk, as you sip your coffee, instead of reading an email at the same time as having your coffee, how about just having a sip of the coffee, focusing on the taste of it? Why would we do that? Why on earth would we do that? We do that because it connects us to reality. That's why. And because the coffee deserves to be tasted. If we're not going to taste our coffee, we might as well have something that tastes terrible, right? I always think it's quite funny, people pay for extraordinarily expensive meals and spend the entire time talking. We never actually focus on the taste of the food. It's quite ironic. We might as well have gone to McDonald's instead. So this is the blank slate, which is, in theory, is possible when we give ourselves this space. We can respond to whatever it is. We can face whatever situation we're in, whether it's a conversation or a working task, which is on our own, with a fresh state of mind. That's the gift mindfulness is giving us, okay? And it's a gift which is not coming from really anywhere else in society. Everything else in society is emphasizing the gifts of progress, making yourself bigger, making yourself better, changing everything, right? This is the opposite. Mindfulness is saying, what if everything's okay now, and we just slow down and just look at things from a fresh perspective? What will we see? Okay? This is the clock we have in our mindfulness space. It's always a good conversation starter, and it really winds people up, because the last thing that we want is to be reminded that it's always now. This is where our power and our freedom lies, is right now, in this second now, in this meeting. This is not about what you do in 10 hours or in 2 weeks. It's about what you do right now. How are we listening now? How are we paying attention now? Are we looking through a lens of distortion of what can I get from this? Or are we just listening? Right? That's practicing mindfulness, is doing it right now. Okay? Noticing how we're doing something now. And the last thing I want to say, really, almost, is what is true resilience. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about this. The message is really prevalent in society that resilience is fighting, okay? Mindfulness is telling us the opposite. Mindfulness is telling us that wisdom really lies in being able to experience the waves of life, which we have no control over, the tidal waves of life. Allow them to hit us, because they are hitting us all the time, right? So we allow the wave of anxiety, the wave of loneliness, the wave of fear. We actually allow that to be there. We're not running away from it then. Do you notice that? I wonder if you notice that. If you allow yourself to experience these things, you are not running away. You're not fighting it. And it's a tremendous shift. And what you see is that when that happens, sometimes there's nothing to be done. Sometimes simply allowing it to be felt is all that we needed to do. Sometimes that takes the energy away and the wave subsides. Okay? One of the most famous quotes in mindfulness is, we can't control the waves, but we can learn to surf. Okay? So we can learn to deal with these things better if we allow ourselves first to feel them, to look at them, to notice them, and to really understand what's going on in our minds and our lives. I have a fantastic poem now, one of the most beautiful poems that I've ever heard, that I want to share with you, okay? And we'll have 5 minutes for questions at the end if anybody has any. This is called The Guest House, and it's by Rumi, and I would really encourage you guys to look this up, get it framed, get it tattooed on yourself, because it's so good to remember this. It's the most fantastic reminder of the most powerful part of mindfulness. This human being, let me start again. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. I think it's a really wonderful poem that's absolutely beautiful, and it sums up mindfulness perfectly. Allow ourselves to feel whatever there is to be felt and to experience it, and then choose how to respond. Have a positive and curious attitude to whatever challenges life throws at us, because we don't know what the purpose of it is. He says in the poem, he may be clearing you out for some new delight. Perhaps this entire crisis really is a period of transition to all sorts of good things which are going to come after this. But we need to experience it and allow ourselves to be here properly and acknowledge it and give it the respect this process deserves. Okay. Final thing here. The word business comes from busyness. It may surprise or not surprise you to know. And this comes from an Old English word, besignis, which actually means anxiety. So don't be too hard on yourself if you're feeling anxious on a day-to-day basis. This is the world that we have created. And the reason I put this up there is to show us that it doesn't have to be like this. Perhaps it has been like this up until now. It doesn't need to be like this, because you are individually free inwardly to perceive life in the way that you want to, in the way that you think is correct, and to behave in the way that you think is correct. If you don't feel like you have to rush, but everybody else is rushing, then don't rush. Watch what happens, okay? Thank you so much for listening, guys. I wanted to leave a little bit more time for questions, but it's not possible, sadly. I'd just like to open this up to questions now. Any questions at all, please get in touch with me. I have my email here. I'm more than happy to respond. I'm not sure why one of the letters has gone white there, but you can see the email address there, dom@thefreespiritproject.earth. Please get in touch with us. We are doing all sorts of work at the moment, helping various companies, helping various people out during these times. And we're seeing a huge rise in demand for mindfulness right now, which is not surprising, because the human mind tends to wake up in the moment of crisis. And it's a good thing that people are turning to these practices from our point of view. It's just, we obviously wish that everybody realized the need for these things before it comes to a point of crisis, okay? So I'd just like to give a big thank you also to Swedish Business Council and to Cigna and to AmCham. I really hope this has been useful for you, and I know that Cigna do as well. I think it's really great that Cigna are giving this sort of advice to their clients. I think it's really, really tremendously important. And the bottom line on mental health, from our perspective as mindfulness practitioners within my company, is that we can attend to our own mental health. And when we understand how to attend to our own mental health as individuals, we will take an enormous amount of strain off the health sector and save ourselves a lot of hassle and stress and money as well. Okay, and I know Cigna agree with that, because they're always talking about the benefits of these sorts of practices. So I'll just wait around now for any more questions, but I'd just like to thank you all again for your attendance, and please put some of this into practice. It's all about putting this into practice and seeing what it's like for you in your real life when you try to live in a more mindful way and change your perspective on things. And just take that space to give yourselves a few minutes just to not do anything and let attention come back into the present moment. That's what this is all about. And I hope that you can take away from this talk a new understanding of a different way of approaching the world and a different way of approaching all of the various problems that we can encounter in life. Thank you so much.
Dominic, thank you very much. And your insights were amazing. We're getting feedback already from your discussion points. So I'm really excited that people found it useful, that they take something away that they can use in their day. I know I personally will. And I, like you, want to thank Cigna, the Swedish Business Council, our friends over at AmCham in Qatar and AmCham in Oman, for sharing this ability, or for allowing us to share the ability with all of their members and crew. Cigna has long been a partner to AmCham Dubai, and they continue to be a very strong partner for us. We're going to be looking with them at some HR best practice during this time and making sure that not only is the greater good being served in this challenging environment, but that we are all aware of how we need to be working in that capacity. So I thank Cigna for their continued support. It is ongoing. We are a client of theirs, so I can tell you from the user end that they are right there to give us updates about transitionary services they're providing in this time and space, and we have been on the receiving end as a user, and it is a great company to work with. So thank you, Cigna. Thank you, Dominic. And I look forward to meeting you guys again at our next webinar. Thank you all for being here. Stay safe and stay well.
Thank you.